Hello and welcome to the latest of my deep dive videos. This one into the Gemini new moon, which occurs in all the major centres of the world on the 30th of May 2022. Now, to find out the exact time in your domain, please see the screen now. Now, what I'm going to do is tell you about this Gemini new moon, the energy that creates, and the impact this can have over the next month. I'm then going to share the event wheel based on Universal Central Time. So we're talking about the more formal astrology, because there are some interactions with this particular event which are hugely exciting, not least that Mars and Jupiter, which peaked in an exact conjunction just the day before this event occurs on the 29th of May, but are still very closely together as this new moon occurs, are really going to bring extra vibrancy and energy to this event. But there are other influences to explore as well, so please stay with me for that. Then I'm going to share a more simple wheel of all the zodiac in terms of equal house and where the planets are located, thinking about Aries as being the first sign. So this event for us all occurs in house 3, the third zodiac sign. And that's very much about how we interact with people immediately around us. It's about our daily experience. It's about instant communications. And of course, with Mercury, the ruler of the sign of Gemini, still in a retrograde, just tucked up behind the sun and the moon in the sign of Taurus, we need to explore that too. And finally, I'm going to share the zodiac forecast from Aries through to Pisces for the sun or the ascendant. You can watch from either perspective. The choice is yours. Now, if you would like to embrace more serious astrology, if you give me 3 pieces of your personal information of time, date and place of birth, I can provide you with a roadmap that can guide you for the rest of your life. Also, my special package, I will give you a 12-month forecast, a personal horoscope, totally based on this data. No 2 charts are the same, so it's utterly unique to you. And there's 30% off. So please see the link beneath this video. And just before I begin, if you've yet to subscribe to my channel, I'm racing towards that 100,000 mark. I'd be very grateful if you've yet to subscribe. If you did, click or tap on the bell notification symbol. I've been affected a lot by a lot of health issues over a long period of time, but I'm really getting into my stride now. So your support, if you have subscribed already, is truly appreciated. So the Gemini new moon is very much about a moving up of energy, because the air element that governs this sign is about how we think. The sign of Gemini is brilliantly flexible because it's a mutable sign, so it's able to flex and receive information quickly, be very nimble in its movements. Of course, the moon in an air sign can be a bit more logical and detached, not quite so emotional. In some ways, that can give us a little bit of extra perspective. In other ways, we could be a little bit less responsive in an emotional dimension. But what this will mean is a speeding up. So I think the next month, if we're thinking about anything to do with sharing information, if we're thinking about getting a new mode of transport, or if we're thinking about adding to our technology, or making some improvements in our relationships to those people that we experience daily, whether it's neighbours or siblings, all these kind of interactions can be really supercharged with extra energy. And so obviously a new moon can be when we set our intention. So if there is important communication that you need to engage with, this is a time to put extra thrust into the situation. But with Mercury in a retrograde and just tucked up in the sign of Taurus, clearly there is the potential for some fumbles and snags to still occur. But the sign of Taurus is very much about practicalities. But this is an event, as I'm sharing on the screen now, which has a very big Taurus dimension, because not just Mercury in retrograde, we also have the North Node, Uranus and Venus, the ruler of the sign of Taurus, and therefore in its dignity, they're all in Taurus. And so what I feel that we want from our ideas as we set our intentions on this new moon is to see some tangible progress. Also, Mercury is forging a tremendous angle to Pluto, so it may be retrograde and therefore we may be rethinking some things, but the angle to Pluto in the sign of Capricorn, another Earth connection, is about trying to understand things in terms of the tangible benefit, the more practical assets. So our thoughts are definitely given a huge boost by this new moon, but it's how we deploy that energy that's going to be important. You can also see, based on Universal Central Time, the ascendant is 9 degrees in Virgo, and that's conjunct the part of fortune. So this ascendant is actually forging a really super link to Venus, the ruler of Taurus. So this earth energy is asking us to really extract the most benefit in a tangible way from any plans, ideas or conversations that we may have. Now, what's the catch? Well, the big one, to be honest, is the Mercury retrograde, but not in isolation. It's that Mercury is in retrograde and in a square to Saturn. Now, Saturn is in the people's planet of Aquarius, so that affects us all collectively, but you can see it's in the 6th house. So having Mercury in the 9th house of higher knowledge and Saturn's in the 6th house of details. So one of the things we mustn't do, therefore, is overpromise about what we might deliver in terms of the information we're sharing through the new moon, because of Mercury retrograde, but Mercury in the 9th house could just trick us a little bit into being a bit too expansive, and Saturn's anchoring Mercury saying, look, don't promise more than we can realistically deliver, and it's going to be important to narrow our focus a little bit, otherwise we could scatter ourselves too thinly and end up feeling rather weary. And the sign of Gemini is very much in keeping with the nervous system, so that's something to be mindful of. However, in a more energized way, you can see that Mars and Jupiter are combining in a sextile with this new moon. Now, it's a bit of a gap, it's about 6 degrees, but that's pretty close. And of course, Mars and Jupiter together is very, very feisty in the sign of Aries. It's about getting things done. It's about having maximum confidence to move things forwards quickly. So it's about being very decisive. And obviously Aries energy is about getting things off the ground. So the fire is mixing with the air of the elements of Gemini. And as someone pointed out recently on my Jupiter forecast for the next year, and you can see the link for this beneath this video, that air and fire, the combination, could lead to perhaps more fires, certainly to the land, happening around the world, because we have seen a lot more flooding, but we're also seeing a lot more fires. So that was a really astute observation. But I think if there is an idea that we've got that we're really enthusiastic about, we must remember that Jupiter is about growth, optimism and fortune. And so if we have an idea we really believe in, I think this new moon is really encouraging us over the next month to really go for it, you know, and be as persuasive and upbeat and cheerful. And there is an opportunity for a lot more mixing and mingling with this set of energies. And perhaps the thing that we can enjoy is good food and good wine with all that gathering of influences in the sign of Taurus. Now, in terms of the overall chart that I'm showing on the screen now, you can see that we have Mars and Jupiter and Chiron in house 1. We have Venus, Uranus, the North Node and Mercury in house 2 of Taurus, and we have the Sun and the Moon in that conjunction in the new moon in house 3, and so on. So that's how you read that, because that's the overall chart that we can all recognize that begins with Aries essentially as being the ascendant. But in the previous chart, that was based on the more serious astrology. Now please stay with me for your individual zodiac forecast, beginning with Aries. Now for you, Aries, this really rocks this particular new moon. And if you have been finding that you've experienced any kind of inertia, perhaps COVID, perhaps changes to your work, changes to your employment situation, obviously the cost of living crisis has also been a factor. But with Venus in your second house, your drive, your energy, your determination can really be given a superb platform to flourish. So this is a chart really absolutely perfect for you to prosper. Now for you, Taurus, the new moon occurs in your second house of everyday resources. But because you've got that clustering of energy in your sign, your creativity can be really important. But with Mars and Jupiter in your 12th house, it may be an old skill, experience, connection or knowledge that you repackage or reconnect to in some way, which brings this new energy in. But I think you are going to be looking to improve your financial situation on the back of this new moon over the next 4 weeks. Now Gemini, for you, clearly the new moon in your sign is a glorious opportunity to embrace your individuality. But if you can combine your individuality with a lever of collaboration and cooperation, which is coming through the energies of Mars and Jupiter, well, you have a great mix. It's just to really make the most of this particular new moon, because your ruler is in retrograde and is tucked up with those other 3 placements in your 12th house. You may not totally believe in your ability to pull off something. Perhaps a new project or a new idea seems a little daunting. Maybe you'll be questioning yourself. Maybe someone's, not being quite as supportive as they could be. Try to push all those potentially doubtful thoughts out of your thinking and really go for it, because what Jupiter and Mars are saying is that if you can embrace the ideas or the approaches that you really aspire to in terms of what feels right, in terms of your ideals, all the other rewards will just come naturally. So it is a time to be idealistic, but also a time to be very instinctive and listen to your gut feeling. But the new moon in your sign is certainly a great opportunity to give yourself some kind of glamorous makeover. A freshening up can give you even more vibrancy and effervescence, qualities that you have in spades, and they can be turned up to max. So don't let that gathering of energy in the 12th house dim your light. Seize the moment. Now for you, Cancer, obviously the new moon is in your 12th house. But there's a bit of a contradiction or paradox, if you like, because Mars and Jupiter are combining in your 10th house of success in a way which is pushing you to seize the limelight, to seize the moment, to raise your profile, to be much more outgoing and self-confident. And that gathering of energy in Taurus is kind of saying to you really that the path to progress is really your connections to others. But there may be part of you over the next month that at times, despite the vibrancy of the energy in Taurus and the confidence of Mars and Jupiter in your 10th house, that you may need to just step back a little bit and just pause, reflect, have a few moments of quiet and tranquility. Now, Cancerian people often need to stay in touch with how things feel. This is no different. This is a very feeling new moon for you, but it's a feeling new moon with a lot of logic built into it in terms of your sign. So the logic is important, but it's also important to balance all the drive that this event is creating, to just give yourself time to just mull over things a little bit. If you do feel that you want to keep people at a bit of an arm's length at times, even if people object or want you to join in, try to stay with what feels right for you. A new moon in the 12th house is probably the trickiest new moon of all. But you will get through this one, and remember the next new moon is in your sign, and that's forging a sensational semi-sextile to the glorious Venus, but also the wonderfully expansive Jupiter is going to be squaring your new moon. So that's to look forward to in 1 month's time. Now, for you, Leo, having a new moon in the sign of Gemini is a real push to really capitalize on that part of your personality which can be very radiant, and really enjoy being with other people. So a social event of some kind. And it could be linked to your work with all this Taurus energy in the mix, but also travel with a friend or some kind of group of people, or it could be a day out, you know, with an organisation that you're affiliated to. Obviously, COVID has limited a lot of our abilities to be free spirits, but if you can get together with others, I think that's going to be richly rewarding for you. And because you do have this collective of energy, despite Mercury being in retrograde in your sector of success, others may expect you in some way to take the lead, and that's something that you can do with aplomb. Now, Virgo, of course, this is an interesting new moon for you because it is in your sector of goals, ambition and success, but your ruler is retrograde in your sister earth sign of Taurus. So you may still be sorting out some information, and that information may be to do with a professional application, it may be to do with something to do with higher education or learning, or maybe the role that you'd really like to do would be linked in some kind of way to one which is quite fluid, spontaneous, could even be linked to moving around or travel itself. Now, because you have Mars and Jupiter in your 8th house, your desire to improve your financial lot is going to be very strong. So this is a new moon which can bring success and an improvement in your cash flow over the next month, but you must really go for it, but clarify that information. So if something is outstanding, there's a contract, you're not quite sure how it's going to come to pass, believe in your ability to unravel this satisfactorily, but you may need to speak to some kind of professional advisor in order to get the clarity, which is always so important for you to feel comfortable. But in terms of the technical astrology, remember this event occurs in your sign in terms of the ascendant, and that is conjunct the part of fortune. So think big, believe in yourself, and march forwards. Libra, now of course the sign of Gemini is your sister air triplicity, so that's glorious for being much more attuned to the opportunities to be more spontaneous, to embrace the side of your nature which likes to be more adventurous, or investigate things that stimulate your mind, because obviously an air new moon is very much about the mentality of our situations, and for you the 9th house is higher energy, so that can be linked to travelling, physically travelling, but with Mercury, the planet of communication, in retrograde, obviously a financial issue may have been a little bit snagged and you may still be trying to work that out, but the confidence that Mars and Jupiter give you in your 7th house is really helping you to reinforce your boundaries and to present yourself in a very dynamic and, may I even say, a rather attractive and alluring way. Now, you're someone who can run a little bit on the cool side when it comes to relationships, and I think basically the passion of Mars and Jupiter being on your 7th house or descendant cusp is really a fabulous opportunity to put much more thrust into your approach. So that means being perhaps a little bit more risk-taking. Your ruler Venus is also in your 8th house. That can be about lust, but it also can be about filthy lucre. So there are opportunities here in terms of your personal interactions, but also a financial situation, but you just need a bit more patience to deal perhaps with Mercury's retrograde. But the connection between Mercury and Pluto gives you a wonderful ability to drill down into what's really relevant. Which brings us to Scorpio. Now for you, the sign of Gemini is very much in keeping with the energies of your sign. It's about transformations, the 8th house. Now of course the sign of Gemini is quite cool and can be has a tremendous ability to be a bit of a chameleon, and maybe over the next month you are going to consider different opportunities, and maybe some of them can be to do with the people that you're interacting with. So you may show different sides of yourself, I feel, but some kind of transformation is possible. But because Mercury is in a retrograde in your 7th house of relating, maybe gaining some greater clarity around a relationship matter is really at the core of what you need to achieve. And of course, with Saturn in your 4th house of home and emotion, in a square with Mercury in your 7th house of relating, the transformation could be that someone's going to tell you in perhaps a more blunt way how they feel about you. It's not necessarily just you being rather frank, which you have a real ability to be. But of course Mars, your ruler traditionally, and Jupiter together in your 6th house in this event is giving you a lot of physical energy and drive, which I think is absolutely fantastic. Now that brings us to Sagittarius, and for you the new moon is in your sector of relating, so the next month can be a tremendous chance to get out, interact with people, and with Mars and your ruler Jupiter in a conjunction, your physical energy can really be up and your enthusiasm very, very strong. Now, the fact that there is this energy in the 6th house of Taurus, that points towards the potential for some physical and practical changes in your situation. A good time really to be thinking about maybe finding a job which is more satisfying, maybe a job where you represent an organisation, such as an advisor, a salesperson. It could be a role where you're providing some kind of technical support. So if you're relating to people, you can do so with passion, enthusiasm, but also great precision, as long as you can deal with Mercury's retrograde, which I think you can, because it is in such a fabulous link with Pluto. You just need to be aware that stress can still be a little bit of a factor for you. So don't spread yourself too thinly with Mercury in a square with Saturn, which is really emphasizing your 3rd and 6th house cusp, which can be about stretching ourselves a bit too thin. So lots of early nights, but also a real opportunity to possibly even meet someone if you're single. So this can be a time when you can increase your understanding of the needs of others in relationships, what they expect from you, but also what you're prepared to give to them. Which brings us to Capricorn. Now Capricorn, for you, you've got the new moon itself is in house 6. So if you are thinking about being a bit more conscientious about what you eat and drink, the amount of exercise you get, being more ordered in your daily environment, all those things can work well. Now, if I hear you saying, Patrick, I'm very, very good at all those things anyway, well, that's good. One of the things with the 6th house energy is the concept of marginal gains, because 6th house energy is very precise. So even if you make 4 or 5 small changes to how you do things, if you think about the impact that they can have on the smooth running of your situation, or even your pure physical energy, they could make a 20% difference, which in your overall circumstances, all those small changes can add up and actually be really positive for you. But you know, even if you're thinking of making some practical changes, you need to have fun doing it, and that part of you that can be such good company. Your sense of humour just gets stronger and stronger as you get older. You may have been a little bit wary of opening up when you were younger, a little bit shy. But having Venus in your 5th house is giving you a lot of sex appeal on this event. So enjoy that. But of course, Mercury in retrograde just suggests that some dates or appointments could be a bit of a shift in feet. But with Pluto in your sign forging a great link to Mercury, you can penetrate through the mist and clarify things. But I think with your ruler in a square with Mercury, this continues to be a time when you do need to be a little cautious about finances. But if you are spending any loot, I think it's likely to be on where you live, and that could come in a bit of an impulsive way because of the combination between Mars and Jupiter, which are pushing you to invest or improve your immediate environs in a way which works for you. So for some goats, this could even be the desire to move altogether, maybe even working from home. But whatever you do, it needs to be creative, it needs to be fun. Aquarius, the gathering of energy in Gemini is of course emphasizing the air triplicity, of which you are one of the 3 signs, along with Gemini and Libra. So essentially, you're a very, very skilled communicator, and having Mars and Jupiter on your 3rd house of your personal situation, very Gemini, and then having this gathering in Gemini, very much in keeping with the 5th house energy of Leo. So there's a great potential for warmth and expressing your interests and your ideas with a great deal of panache and enthusiasm. But Mercury, the planet of communication, which of course you have a great affinity for as it's exalted in your sign and governs the 2nd decan of your zodiac sign, well, that is challenged by your traditional ruler of Saturn. So maybe your own sort of lack of self-confidence, or maybe your preference to have moments alone, which, you know, Aquarius people can have a bit of a duality to them. You know, one part of you can be very clubbable and friendly, another part needs quite a lot of time to yourself. Just balancing all these energies at the moment, I think generally you're going to be wanting to be with people. But what could inhibit you a little bit is some anxieties or worries about how you fit in or get on with others. And that's not, it's not for me to say that you should just get past that, because those are very important parts, if they're operating within you, that you need to listen to. But I think it could be a bit mixed. So, but mainly a very positive opportunity. If there is someone you really like, you could pluck up the courage to reach out to them over this next 4 weeks. I think generally your home also could be a place where you're inviting people around and playing mind host, particularly with Venus there, and you may be doing some decorating as well. But your enthusiasm, your energy can be infectious over this next month. Which brings us to Pisces. Now Pisces, of course, your sign is also mutable, just like the sign of Gemini. But this new moon is house 4 for you, where you live, how you live there, your emotional relationships, anything to do with physical or more spiritual or sensory security. And the energy that's lighting up your 3rd house is really exciting. But Mercury being in a retrograde just means don't blurt something out, and just be aware that maybe there could be something that needs renewing, such as a domestic appliance, or perhaps you're going to want to use Mercury retrograde to think very carefully about where you live, because the thinking or the discussions you have, perhaps with siblings or close friends, can then inform your actions. And your actions could be quite thrusty because of the combination between Mars and Jupiter in your 2nd house. So if you have the money to change where you're living, either by some kind of upgrade or moving altogether, it wouldn't surprise me if you had lots of conversations about doing that and setting things in motion, whether that's getting in people to make changes and improvements, or actually moving altogether. All are possible. So that brings us to the end of the sun sign forecast. I should just say that this event does see, of course, the sun and the moon at 9 degrees and 8 minutes in Gemini, which means therefore they're in the first decan. So very mercurial, despite Mercury's actual retrograde. Also, the Sun is conjunct Aldebaran, which is a fixed star. This fixed star can, leverage great energy, and remember, it's forging that sextile with Mars and Jupiter. And if there's been something you've been working towards over a long period of time, the actual event in terms of the technical astrology is in the 10th house. So perseverance can be rewarded, and this could be, for some people, a real raising in your profile and a greater status and success. Unfortunately, I do feel it's possible that by about August the 11th, we are going to see, so nearer to the end of this particular event, so we're getting to the end of June and inching our way towards July, we are seeing Saturn and Uranus coming back together. It's going to become much more the case by about August the 11th, and I think there is a possibility with that particular fixed star, which is can be very, very lucky. It's a magical star in some ways, but I think we could see COVID spiking up a little bit towards the end of this particular month. But thank you so much for joining me. It's been a great pleasure. Good luck and goodbye.